Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and if the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad falls in December, because that's on a lunar year, we also will have that as part of our multicultural program. And we had our brother Amir to actually appear and to represent the Islamic community at one of those interfaith presentations. And we use that annual event in order to raise gifts, holiday gifts for children in Ward 8 up to the age of 11. I think it's best, if we were to talk about community organizing and what the Anacostia Coordinating Council does, is simply give you an example of what we're doing. And I will give you, well, what I'll do is I'll run down what the month of August has been for us, because the ACC is the type of organization that brings people together. So that means that we quite literally are involved and may be involved in any issue facing the community. We would like to say that when it comes to community activism and issues, that the ACC is involved from A to Z, from AIDS to zoning, so we can be there. On August the 1st, we had an informational table at the annual National Night Out for Crime, which was held at the Ball Legal Recreation Center in the southwestern part of Ward 8. And our presentation there consisted of the pictures, basically the flyers of the unsolved homicides east of the Anacostia River and the missing persons. What has been happening over the years is that, of course, east of the Anacostia River has the highest number of homicides and therefore the highest number of unsolved homicides. But unfortunately, what has been happening in our community is that we have a code of silence, the so-called no snitching type of behavior, which really is quite literally killing our people. And so when we exhibit those pictures, and we have the exhibit going back to 2010, and when you see all of the pictures, and they're basically young black men, hopefully we're sending the message that those lives also matter and that those people are not forgotten, and hopefully it will prick someone's conscience to come forth with the information so there can be justice for the murder victims and for their families. Last Saturday, the Anacostia Coordinating Council, we were at the Hillsdale Civic Association. As a matter of fact, this museum is located in the Hillsdale neighborhood in Ward 8. Unfortunately, there is the misconception and the misperception that everything east of the Anacostia River is either Anacostia or southeast. Mm-hmm. It's as if, you know, we don't have identifiable neighborhoods rich in history and culture and tradition that the other wards in the city have. Ward 8 has the dubious distinction of having the smallest number of civic associations, and of course that poses a problem in this community, because if the people in the neighborhood are not organized, then many times they're not able to address community issues in a collective way. And particularly when we see the forces of basically African American removal and gentrification advancing throughout the city, it's important that the people be organized. There are 16 neighborhoods in Ward 8, and only 7 at this time actually have civic associations. So the Anacostia Coordinating Council has been a part of helping to revitalize and restore civic associations. I'm glad to say Hillsdale, as I said, where this is, and as a matter of fact, the Berry Farm neighborhood is also in Hillsdale, has come back after a couple of decades of being defunct. And that's been one of our projects, and we call that our community engagement project. And we're working on helping to restore other civic associations in the community. We are also engaged in the cultural arts. So we've had a 5-year community partnership with the Anacostia Playhouse, which is right on Shannon Place, a couple of blocks from here. And last Sunday, the ACC hosted the reception for the final performance of, which was a musical about Billie Holiday, her final concert before her death. And as I said, we will have on December the 5th back at the Anacostia Playhouse our multicultural holiday celebration. The ACC also has a partnership with WETA TV and the Smithsonian Anacostia Community Museum, where we host book talks and we host screenings of documentaries. As a matter of fact, just this last Wednesday, there was the screening of Washington in the 1990s documentary on WETA. So we hosted that and co-hosted that, and it was a lunch and a discussion. And if you become a member of ACC, or even if you get on our mailing list, you will get information, so you can be invited to that, because usually the things that we host, the Price is Right is free. You know, like, there's always food. Another thing that ACC is doing is that in terms of our environmental commitment to the community, and that's very important, because if you were to survey most of the people in Ward 8 and ask them what are the top 10 issues facing the community, I would dare say that the environment would probably come in number 11, or even, and unfortunately, in predominantly African American communities throughout the country, we have seen that environmentalism has not been a community priority, and it's very important that you really pay attention to your environment, because it affects your behavior, etc. And one of the reasons that we see so much blight in many predominantly African American communities is because of the low level of environmental consciousness. Right in this neighborhood, for example, which, let's be honest about it, has a long-standing history of being one of the oldest open-air drug markets in the District of Columbia, which has been there for around 50 years, as a matter of fact. And with that type of behavior also comes the litter. And when you see, particularly young black kids who grow up in trash, they will think that that's what they deserve, you know, that's what they're used to. A trashy environment will also lead to trashy behavior. When young kids see adults just throwing trash on the street, then they will adopt that trashy behavior. They will talk trash, they will treat people like trash, and let's be honest about it. Throwing a piece of litter on the street at an early age is basically they're only beginning to eventually leaving a dead body on the pavement in other future years, because that also is a form of litter. So one of the things that we're doing in the ACC is that we're trying to at least elevate the issue of environmentalism in the community, so that people will get more involved in those issues. We are one of the founding members of a group where the acronym is APAC, APACC, that's the Anacostia Park and Community Collaborative. Right here in Washington, D.C., we have Anacostia Park, which, by the way, is larger in area than Rock Creek Park and New York City Central Park. But you would never really know that. And the thing about it is that if you go to Anacostia Park, particularly on this side of the river, you will see that it is under-resourced and it's underutilized. And to have an urban waterway an endangered urban waterway right here in the nation's capital, and actually to have predominantly African-American neighborhoods on one side of the river, we should view ourselves as river people, and we should get more involved in that, because the future of development of the Anacostia Park is going to have a tremendous impact, both environmentally, recreationally, and economically on this community. Let's keep in mind that the word Anacostia comes from the name of a Native American tribe, and they were merchants. So they knew all about being green, both ecologically and both economically. And you can actually make money and still have a respect for your environment, and that's an important attitude to help develop in the community. So as part of APAC, the Anacostia Park and Community Development, as we continue to have different events so that the community's consciousness can be raised about the Anacostia Park as well as the river, next year we're going to be focused on two major events. Next year will be the 100th anniversary of Anacostia Park. Also, it will be the bicentennial of Frederick Douglass's birthday. And we must remember that Frederick Douglass lived here in Anacostia. He was known as the Lion of Anacostia, and Frederick Douglass also was an environmentalist. Frederick Douglass was an abolitionist, but he not only opposed the institution of slavery because of the intrinsic immorality of that peculiar institution, but also he argued that it was the practices of slavery would basically deplete the soil. And so he argued against it from an environmental issue. He was an environmentalist. And also Frederick Douglass was a feminist, which a lot of people, he was for women's rights to vote, etc. When obviously that was not popular during that time. But one of the things that we want to do is to help, well, first of all, let the community know that we do have those historical milestones next year with the centennial anniversary of Anacostia Park, the bicentennial of Frederick Douglass's birthday. And one of the things that the Anacostia Coordinating Council wants to do is to engage the community in remembering one of the major community events that used to take place in Anacostia Park, which was the annual celebration of Malcolm X. You know, like for those of you who around my age, or maybe a little younger, should recall that from 1972 to 1995, we used to have an annual celebration of Malcolm X Day, which actually attracted not just hundreds of African Americans, but tens of thousands. And that went on for 25 years, which is a quarter of the time of the history of Anacostia Park. So we want to have some type of event so that we can remember that. And when we do form that, Brother Amir, I want to talk with you, because after all, let's be honest about it, Malcolm X was a Muslim. And so we can use that part of the celebration next year of the centennial of Anacostia Park to actually help educate the community a bit more about Malcolm X, and also the role that his religion played in his life, and also that helped to actually mold and to frame his activism. As we move on, like today, Brother Amir mentioned, the Anacostia Coordinating Council is over at Barry Farm right now, which is having its annual Barry Farm Health, Wellness, and Back to School Festival, which is going on until 3:30. And And today, the Anacostia Coordinating Council, not only do we have our exhibit of the unsolved homicides and missing persons in Ward 8, but today we are focusing on getting information out in the community about the problems and the dangers of underage drinking and marijuana usage. And as a matter of fact, the way that we've helped organize today, that if people want to get the food and the refreshments, they have to produce a piece of literature on underage drinking and marijuana usage. Trust me, if they want to get those chicken wings, they're gonna pick up that literature. Tomorrow, the ACC is co-sponsoring, along with the Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative, our 5th annual baseball outing, where we take Ward 8 youth to the Nationals game. There are so many young people here in this ward who have never attended a professional sporting event. And so we do that, and for this will be our 5th year, and Monsignor East, you will appreciate this. ACC, we take all of the children